Okay, so remember, they're changing my voice. I am not gay. This video is about what happens when you deliberately keep on sinning. It's also about the Garden of Eden. So we'll be talking about Genesis 2 and 3, and Proverbs 10 and Proverbs 11, and Romans. But it should be a pretty short video. So first of all, the tree of knowledge, which is the tree of knowledge of good and evil, was said to be in the center of the garden. In this video, I'm going to help you understand why it has to do with the craft and secret societies and Greco-Roman pagan mysteries, etc., etc. Why it has to do with how the school system is structured and why it's evil for it to be structured that way. Bear with me. You'll see that I'm right. Now, we see in the next chapter, Genesis 3, that the snake is described as crafty. Now, this is not a coincidence. The same types of people who translated the Bible are the same types of people who the governing class commission, hire, right? A mission, they hire, a mock mission, they hire to come up with things like the school system and things of that nature. To come up with things like the crafts in the world. Long ago, people would enter a craft as an apprentice. And that custom continued forever and ever and ever, so to speak, right? It continued. It's been going on for a long time, and it continued on into Freemasonry. Now, when the school system was structured, it was structured with that same model and mentality. Write that phrase down, model and mentality. They wanted to make it so that people who dress a certain way, who come into a certain way and spirit, a certain energy, a certain state of being that is clear cut, that clearly proves my point, right? Their pants hiked up, you dress like a quote unquote square, the square and compass, where are they going? They come into a certain way about them. And they have a certain attitude or a certain personality. And when they start to go into school as a shallow and boring person who's not really thirsting for righteousness and spiritual depth and life, then when they hit the books, it's easier for them too. They don't stress about how they're missing the deeper purpose of life, why they're wasting time in school so much. Not as much as the people who do bad. Certainly not as much as the righteous who may not get very good grades in school. They don't stress about women because their relationships are shallow. It's like Pee Wee Herman and his wife, Jim Carrey in the movies and his wife, Adam Sandler in the movies and his wife. They're shallow people. They say things like, "Ah, brother," and they make corny jokes. Chuck E. Cheese, Shallow Hal, what have you. So the snake is not just crafty, he's a boring, foolish, and contemptible and worthless spirit of a bookworm. Now, how do we know it's a spirit? Because it later on says that God gave the man and woman clothes made of skin. So the Garden of Eden was in the spiritual realm, is one of the main interpretations of it, certainly a true interpretation of it. The earth that they're referring to is a spiritual place, not this physical earth. And they're given garments of skin, and that comes with the eyeballs and the brain that they are existing in. So their soul in God's spirit, their soul captured into the flesh-based vessel. So the woman talks to the snake. At this point, man has not yet cultivated himself to be a mighty warrior. The true man who's meant to lead. That hasn't occurred yet. So instead of putting his foot down and saying, "Hey, I'm in charge here. Don't do what the snake is saying," or saying, "How dare you take the fruit from the snake and offer it to me?" He went along with it, which goes back to why Satanists are so often gender neutral or they're white supremacists. Because the white supremacist is not the true leader of all mankind. I am. The Jewish supremacist is not. I am. And certainly somebody who slips into a gender-neutral relationship or marriage is clearly not of God. There is no equality between man and woman. They are different. And in the way of leadership, man is superior. And for someone like me, as I look at the rest of the world, I prefer a suitable helper by my side than any other male. So there's things that make it seem like it starts to equal out, but it doesn't. Now keep in mind, if you're a woman who's a good woman, you just want to do God's work. You don't care that what I said seems to contradict feminism. So what? Feminism is made by mere people who are mad at racist white people taking their right to vote and stuff like this, modern Western feminism, what have you. So why would you care? Why wouldn't you make that distinction? Is your heart that dull and evil? Are you that selfish? Are you a gender supremacist? I'm simply saying what is true. What is everyone knows is true. Well, you want to propound the philosophy of some female who likes to take advantage of females after they're raped when they're vulnerable to turn them into a lesbian or something, or some female in prison or something, or some crooked college professor who thinks that her worldly wisdom is greater than focused moral intensity. That's pathetic. Shame on them. So as we see, the first part of Genesis proves my point. If you deliberately keep on sinning, that you're blocked out of heaven. What was the reason God didn't want them to eat from the tree of knowledge? Was because they aren't supposed to, in a very primitive and basic state, consider good and evil, because they don't have the moral tolerance, the moral will, the moral conviction to do what's right. And the tree of knowledge, first and foremost, symbolizes the knowledge of the worldly crafts. So when you're plotting on everybody else, for example, you kind of understand where the boundaries are, right? To know the ledge. And they're trying to take advantage of people who aren't as skilled in evil as they are. So it's a tree of being skilled in evil, understanding good people to a certain degree, and trying to outmaneuver them, snake them, trying to be cunning in a way that it causes them harm, and that you think that is in your best interest, and things like this. Trying to be crafty. Now, as we connect this to Proverbs, you'll see that this is key. But before the woman goes for the tree, what does God say? He says, let me make for him a suitable helper. I think the main way to interpret this story is that God knew what man would do. When God created the heavens and the earth and the universe and so on and so forth, God knew that man would mess up and keep messing up, and out of this mess would come the top martial arts ever possible. When his flesh dies, done. And that's what it's saying in Genesis through Revelation. If you read carefully and you use the scale of justice. Now let me tell you a little something about justice. In ancient Egypt, there was two deities. I can't stress this enough. This is key here. If you don't understand this in some shape or form, you don't understand the Bible. There's Horus, whose name is a play on words for heroes, right? Those who are champions of God, heroes of God. And there's Set, whose name is a play on words for tease, right? He tempts people. He's a tempter. Satan, set in what? Set in what? Pan, meaning for all the Greco-Roman deities. All the ideas that aren't right with God, Greco-Roman or otherwise. So Set's a deity of storms and chaos and rape and various forms of man trying to do adverse forms of martial arts, which are based on evil and selfishness and false pride and racism and so on and so forth, ethnocentrism, tribalism, what have you. So there's the hippo, there's the snake, there's the jackal. Okay. Now, when we look at the left-right paradigm here in America, right, the donkey can be said to be a variation of the jackal and the deer, which are animals of Set. And the elephant, as depicted as a goofy, silly elephant, can be said to be a variation of the hippo. So these are deities of the devil. And you know them by their characteristics. So when we get to Proverbs, we see that from the mouth of the righteous comes the fruit of wisdom, but a perverse tongue will be silenced. Right? They're naked in the garden. Say, how do you interpret that? There's all kinds of perverted interpretations, all kinds of sex cult garbage out there, Sophia, right? And type of nonsense. When they say it's a word for knowledge or wisdom or some Masonic secret society, baloney. Now we also see in Proverbs it says that the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life. So wisdom is the tree of life, right? But where does it come from? It comes from being righteous. It doesn't come from following the government. It doesn't come from going with the crowd into church or the mosques or the synagogues. It comes from being righteous. So if you deliberately keep on sinning, you are not eating from the tree of life. And we see in Revelation, it brings up the tree of life again. It said, those who are victorious, I'll give them the right to eat from the tree of life. And it talks about the garden at the end. And there's water, and there's trees, and so on and so forth. These things are symbolic. Make a bad tree good, and it will bear good fruit. But no bad tree can bear good fruit, and no good tree can bear bad fruit. You cannot go through the path of Freemasonry or the craft or the military or the government or anything else, right? Any other under system. Because you're cheating me out of my right to lead. First things first. If they are decent, they're going to say, first things first, obey Chukwuemeka, and they're going to make sure that you do, or they're going to kick you out of their craft. If they don't do that, then they're a bad tree that does not love God with all their heart, as their collective spirit, as their individual souls and spirits. And it doesn't seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness. Because out of the mouth of the righteous comes the fruit of wisdom, and the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life. Therefore, wisdom is a tree of life. So there's divine wisdom, morally precise wisdom of God. Now also think about the implications on dating. The woman of God is going to say, I'm only going to consider dating Chukwuemeka, unless of course she's my family, like she's my sister. I don't have a sister, but a cousin or someone in my family. She's going to say, I'm only going to date Chukwuemeka, which is me, or whoever he allows me to date. Am I some kind of tyrant, some kind of weirdo, some kind of eugenicist, some kind of social Darwinist, sex freak, No. Well, that stuff's stupid. And the reason why she's going to choose me in the first place is because she knows that I'm not going to do that. And if somebody wrote her a note to do something immoral and said it wasn't from me, she'd know it was not from me, because all my orders are righteous, and you can tell that they come from God. And you have no viable counterargument because they're sound. There's people with PhDs that wish they could pick apart my arguments, but they can't because I'm right and they're wrong. Now the woman who's like Jezebel, the woman who's like the female who tried to set Peter up to die when she said, you were with the Nazarene. She likes the craft or things like it. Like being a gang member, being a rocker. It's very much like being a Mason. It's that Luciferian spirit. Hell, it's even called a set, a gang set. And rocker and mocker. And Masons do mock rituals and so on. There's all kinds of connections. Occult connections, all kinds. Gangster with no higher cause may as well be a Freemason. Someone in a corporation, hell, everyone cheating me out of my right to lead may as well be a Freemason. With their Luciferian doctrine, whether it's from Pike or somewhere else, it's all Lucifer. And I say this knowing there was Freemasons in my family. But they're not actually my family, because those who obey the commands of God are my family. And it's sad that they chose that path. Even my great-grandpa, when he rallied to my father, actually did so with a pure heart. Maybe my grandfather, on my mom's side, both on my mom's side. But if they did not rally for that reason, they did not go to heaven. People from the tree of knowledge try to learn all kinds of stupid stuff. All kinds of fancy words. They try to learn all kinds of craft stuff. Quantum physics, all this stuff. Maybe they get in a car accident before they die and they forget everything. Maybe they go senile. Maybe they die and they just forget everything and they go to hell. How does that help you? That's a foolish building. You're building on mere knowledge of worldly stuff. If you don't obey God through me and you put your stock in just science and the crafts, technology, what do you get from it? Other martial artists, right? The system sabotaged me and kept me from doing martial arts, but martial arts are life paths. And the highest life path, the true life path, leads you to being sabotaged. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So they're not doing martial arts because their path does not lead them to being persecuted while obeying God through me, and therefore kept from doing martial arts. Unless enough people rally and secure their ability to do martial arts. So they chose just doing punches and kicks and feeling good. It's mere lip service and not martial arts. Just like people in the church, they chose just doing empty rituals and empty prayers instead of obeying God through me. Mere lip service. Their hearts are not with me, or they would obey God through me. And if they don't know who I am, well, there you go. Their hearts aren't with me, are they? And why don't they know? Because of generations of rebellion? You think that works in their favor? The snake in the garden may as well be making that argument. It doesn't work in their favor. Generations of trying to snake me, and then they say, here's my offspring after many, many years after they raise their daughters to reject me whether they know who I am or not. How can they then say, even though we raised our daughters to prevent you from having a child on a planet worth living, because of their sons and their daughters, with a woman worth having a child with? How can they then turn around and say, please spare my son? So what I say to the Mason is, no. You worship the devil. Away from me, you who are cursed to eternal punishment in the fire reserved for the devil and his angels. Because you sat there with a Masonic thong on, afraid to be a man, at the most important time in human history. And so it is with everyone who cheats me out of my right to lead. Shame on you people. And as you die by the 189,000 every single day, off to eternal shame you go. While you harass me and do little punk stuff all day, every day, you're on your way to join the 189,000 people or so who die every day, who go to hell in disgrace. Because instead of them eating the fruit of the tree of life and love, true righteousness, true justice, true wisdom, true sense, see Proverbs 8, where it elaborates on what wisdom is, right? It dwells with insight and power and counsel and sound judgment and all the martial art principles. You who by your actions show God that your heart is with rebels, for a mere animal with technology-based bootlickers pittance